Tyrone Ellis was told to sit in the back on day 1, before he even spoke a word. His white teacher handed him a test designed to break him, not grade him. The class laughed. The questions were 10 grades above. The trap was set. But what happened next turned humiliation into headlines and ignited a war. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The first day of 6th grade at Jefferson Middle School, in Columbia, Missouri, began like a picture from a glossy district brochure. Children buzzing with new supplies, hallways echoing with greetings, and teachers welcoming students with practiced smiles. But for Tyrone Ellis, the 12-year-old who had just transferred from a predominantly black charter school, the day felt muted, like the static between radio stations. Mrs. Gail Thornton stood at the front of room 6B, her ash-blonde hair in a tight bun, her voice clipped and professional. She had been teaching math at Jefferson for over 2 decades, known for her strict rules and obsession with performance. As the students filed in, she called their names with routine efficiency. When she got to Tyrone, her pause was barely a second, but long enough to be noticed. Ellis, Tyrone, back row, seat 3. Back row, always the last to be called on, always the first to be forgotten. Tyrone walked with quiet feet, his backpack hugging his frame. He noticed the subtle glances, the girl with the pastel binder who subtly shifted her chair away, the boy with spiky hair who smirked when Tyrone passed. None of it was new. Tyrone had felt these silent messages before, but he'd hoped Jefferson might be different. His mother, Simone Ellis, had said this school had a gifted track, that it could open doors. But doors didn't open when you were sent straight to the back. Mrs. Thornton started the class with a review of fractions, something Tyrone had already mastered the year before. He sat silently, watching as she praised a boy named Caleb for correctly dividing 3. When Tyrone raised his hand to solve the next more complex problem, her eyes skimmed over him and landed on a white girl in the front. As days passed, the pattern set in like cement. Mrs. Thornton's tone changed when addressing him, less encouraging, more interrogative. When he did well, there was no praise. When he asked for clarification, her response was laced with condescension. "I thought you said you understood this, Tyrone." The math homework became subtly unequal. While the class was given basic linear equations, Tyrone's assignment would include problems involving exponents and multivariable algebra. He recognized the trick. It was masked as advancement. Challenge work, she called it. But the point was clear. Isolate him. Push him. Watch him crack. Simone noticed the shift within 2 weeks. Tyrone's energy dulled when he came home. He stopped talking about math. He'd once been eager to solve problems on the whiteboard, in their kitchen. But now he lingered on his phone or sat at the table in silence. She asked about school, and he gave her vague answers. "It's fine, Mrs. Thornton." "Okay." "She's okay." But Tyrone's notebooks told a different story. Red pen corrections that nitpicked formatting, harsh comments written in the margins. One note read, "Show your work properly, or don't bother turning it in." The other students began to follow her lead. They whispered when he entered the room. During group work, no one volunteered to pair with him. Once during a team quiz, Caleb told him, "Try not to mess it up this time." Tyrone wanted to snap back, but he swallowed it. His mother had taught him to move smarter, not louder. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon, the air conditioning humming loudly, the sun blazing through the blinds in dusty stripes. Mrs. Thornton announced a pop quiz. The class groaned. Tyrone felt his stomach knot, but he was ready. Math was his language, even when the translator, the teacher, was working against him. She handed out the quizzes quickly, but when she reached Tyrone, she paused, then pulled a different sheet from her folder. "This one's for you," she said, her smile tight. Tyrone looked at the paper. These were not 6th grade questions. Some of them he recognized from online math forums. High school level equations. Word problems layered in logic traps. A couple questions weren't even in their textbook. He looked up at her. Her expression dared him to react. The class watched. Some students exchanged glances. Others snickered. Tyrone's ears burned, but he stayed still. He took a breath, picked up his pencil, and began to work. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Mrs. Thornton hovered near his desk, pretending to shuffle papers, but her eyes stayed locked on his quiz. Tyrone's pencil moved like it had a rhythm of its own. He had seen some of these problems before. He spent hours online solving puzzles, and logic riddles. He remembered Simone telling him, "Your mind is a vault, baby. Don't let anyone tell you different." He finished the last problem, double-checked it, and placed the paper quietly on her desk. Mrs. Thornton stared at it without touching it. "Done already?" "Yes, ma'am." "You're sure?" "Yes." The class went quiet again. She looked at the paper, eyes scanning the top line. She didn't speak. After class, Tyrone waited while the others filed out. He could feel her eyes boring into his back. "Stay a moment," she said. He turned, calm. "I gave you that quiz because I wanted to challenge you. I didn't expect you to finish it," she said. "Where did you learn those concepts?" "My mom teaches me, and I read a lot." She raised an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe you solved all that on your own?" "I didn't cheat, if that's what you're asking." She said nothing for a long time. Then she smiled. But it wasn't warm. "Let's see how you do when the pressure's on." The next day she made an announcement. "We'll have an open math demonstration. One student will be solving advanced problems on the board. Live. I think Tyrone would be perfect for this." The class murmured. Tyrone's heart pounded. He looked at her. She smiled again. That same cold grin. "Unless you're not up for it." Tyrone didn't hesitate. "I'm ready," he said. And then he added, calmly, "Give me more." Tyrone quietly accepts the challenge and asks for more. The next week at Jefferson Middle rolled in with the scent of new pencils and faint tension. Tyrone's demonstration day loomed on the calendar like a storm cloud. Mrs. Thornton had announced it with a tone that disguised challenge as opportunity, but everyone in the class could feel the trap beneath her smile. Tyrone could too, but he didn't flinch. At home, the world was different. Simone Ellis had created a space where curiosity ruled. Their small apartment overflowed with second-hand books, puzzles, and computer parts. Tyrone's corner of the living room looked like a hybrid between a lab and a dreamer's den. A chessboard mid-game, coding notes on sticky paper, a tablet glowing with logic puzzles. Simone often called him "my little algorithm." "Your brain connects things faster than Wi-Fi," she'd say, tapping his forehead gently. He'd grin, but lately that grin faded faster. Jefferson Middle wasn't designed for boys like him. Brilliant, quiet, black. Each day there was something new. The side glances, the smirks when he used big words. The way classmates pretended not to hear him during group projects. When Tyrone made suggestions, Caleb or the others would repeat them a minute later. And suddenly they were great ideas. Mrs. Thornton noticed but never stepped in. Instead, she'd compliment the repeaters. "Good thinking, Caleb," she'd say, eyes sliding right over Tyrone. Even small victories were snatched away. When Tyrone aced a pop quiz, Mrs. Thornton inspected his calculator as if expecting hidden software. When he finished classwork first, she accused him of rushing. "Careless work doesn't impress anyone," she'd say, her voice sharp enough for the whole class to hear. At first Tyrone shrugged it off. He knew his worth. But repetition is erosion, and soon the constant doubt began to seep into him. During lunch he sat alone, sketching logic puzzles on napkins while the others traded jokes about him. "Human calculator," someone said. "Robot boy." Then under their breath, "Quieter but not quiet enough. He's smart for his kind." Those words cut deeper than he wanted to admit. He tried to tell Simone, once. "It's just, they look at me different." She turned from her laptop, eyes gentle but firm. "You remember what I told you? People will always underestimate you when they're scared of your mind. Don't shrink to fit their comfort." He nodded. "But what if it's the teacher too?" Simone froze. Just a beat too long. Then she smiled. A calm, controlled smile. "Then we show her what she missed." But showing her meant surviving her. As the week of the demonstration approached, Tyrone felt every pair of eyes waiting for him to stumble. He noticed how Mrs. Thornton would compliment other students loudly, while offering him faint praise like an afterthought. When she marked papers, his margins bled with ink. Words like sloppy, show steps, recheck answers littered his pages even when his calculations were spotless. One day, the principal, Mr. Howard, visited their class. Mrs. Thornton spoke glowingly about the school's academic diversity. She gestured toward the students she deemed stars, Caleb, Lauren, Zoe, and skipped right past Tyrone's row. Tyrone stared at his notebook, jaw tight. He didn't need to be acknowledged, but the deliberate omission stung. After class he lingered in the hall. He overheard Mrs. Thornton speaking softly to Mr. Howard. "He's bright, but difficult to assess." You know how some students appear advanced but don't show consistent understanding? Tyrone's hands clenched. Consistent understanding? He was top of every quiz. What more did she want? Mr. Howard replied politely. Just document everything, Gail. You know the protocol. That night, Tyrone worked in silence. Simone watched him from the kitchen. She saw the tension in his small shoulders, the quiet way he bit his pencil. Something's wrong, she said softly. He didn't look up. Just tired. She came over, resting a hand on his shoulder. You're not just tired, you're carrying something. He blinked hard. She doesn't believe me. She doesn't think I'm smart. She just wants to prove I'm not. Simone exhaled, the sound heavy with understanding. Then let her try, because when people set traps for you, they always end up stepping in first. It became their quiet mantra. But even mantras couldn't block the daily bruises of microaggressions. The next morning, Mrs. Thornton handed back graded assignments. Tyrone's paper, marked 93, had checkwork, U in clear steps scrawled across it. Caleb's marked 89, had excellent effort, in cursive. At recess, Tyrone overheard Lauren whisper, "She only gives him hard stuff to see if he's really that smart. My dad says those kids always cheat somehow." Those kids. 2 words that turned air into concrete. By now, Simone had started emailing Mrs. Thornton directly. "I'd like to discuss Tyrone's progress," she wrote. The reply came in crisp professionalism. "Tyrone is bright but lacks discipline in showing his reasoning. I am working to help him reach consistency." It sounded polite. It felt poisonous. When Simone requested a meeting with Principal Howard, he greeted her with a salesman's smile. "We appreciate engaged parents," he said, hands folded. "But Mrs. Thornton is one of our most experienced educators. I'm sure she only wants what's best. What's best shouldn't come at the cost of my child's dignity," Simone replied evenly. His smile tightened. "We'll monitor the situation." Nothing changed. 2 weeks later came the math midterm, the one test that carried the most weight for placement into the gifted program. Tyrone had studied every night, running mock tests Simone created using old district exams. He was ready. This was his chance to prove his work, his way. When the day arrived, the classroom felt colder than usual. Mrs. Thornton handed out test papers with her usual smile. But when she reached Tyrone, she paused. He saw it, a faint twitch of satisfaction. The test was long but manageable. Tyrone worked methodically, solving each question with calm precision. Around him, pencils scratched. Chairs creaked. Mrs. Thornton patrolled the aisles like a hawk, her heels clicking with slow rhythm. When she passed his desk, she lingered just a second too long. "Make sure to show every step," she whispered. He nodded without looking up. An hour later, he finished early again. He checked his answers twice, then quietly placed the paper on her desk. When she dismissed the class, she gathered the papers into 2 neat stacks, except Tyrone's. His stayed separate, alone. He saw her glance at it as if it were contaminated. After lunch, when the bell rang for homeroom, she called him back. The classroom was empty, the sunlight slanting through half-closed blinds. "Sit," she said. Tyrone obeyed. She pulled out 2 papers, his test and another nearly identical one. "You completed this quickly," she said slowly. "Too quickly." He frowned. "I studied." "I'm sure you did." Her tone was sharp enough to cut glass. "But given your history of inconsistencies, I'd like to make sure you truly understand the material." She placed the second paper in front of him. "Solve these, right now, in front of me." Tyrone's heartbeat echoed in his ears. "But I just took the test. This is for verification." He stared at the page. The questions were different, but equally complex. It wasn't a retest. It was an ambush. He looked up slowly. "You changed it." Mrs. Thornton crossed her arms. "If you can do it once, you can do it again, unless you can't." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Tyrone's hands trembled, but not from fear, from anger, from the quiet, searing insult behind every word. He picked up his pencil. "Fine." She raised her eyebrows, surprised by his steadiness. He began solving, line by line, logic unfolding across the paper. Mrs. Thornton hovered, pretending to grade while watching him from the corner of her eye. The room filled with the faint scratching of lead. Tyrone felt something click inside him, a mix of defiance and focus so deep it silenced everything else. 10 minutes in, he finished the first page. Mrs. Thornton stopped pretending to grade. Her expression faltered, Not with pride, but with disbelief. When the final answer fell into place, Tyrone pushed the sheet toward her without a word. Mrs. Thornton looked down. Her lips parted slightly. Every problem correct. Every step impeccable. She looked up, her face unreadable. We'll discuss this tomorrow. But Tyrone caught it. A flicker of something darker than doubt. A flicker of fear. Mrs. Thornton swaps out Tyrone's test last minute and tells him to solve it in front of the class. Monday arrived with the kind of bitter quiet that only existed inside Jefferson Middle's hallways. Lockers clanged, sneakers squeaked, but Tyrone heard none of it. The only sound echoing in his mind was Mrs. Thornton's voice from last Friday. Solve it again. Right here. She hadn't made any formal accusations. Not yet. But her eyes had spoken volumes. She didn't want to believe he was capable. Now she would make sure no one else believed it either. As the class filed into room 6B, there was a shift in energy, buzzing, curious, like the moments before a show starts. At the front of the room, a dry erase board gleamed under the fluorescent lights, already half covered in advanced algebra problems, equations with square roots, systems with imaginary numbers, and linear programming diagrams covered every inch of space. Mrs. Thornton stood beside it with the poise of someone ready to prove a point, not teach a lesson. Today, she began, we'll take a break from our usual schedule. As some of you know, Tyrone has shown unusual proficiency in recent work. She let the word unusual linger. I've prepared a gifted level problem set for public demonstration. Tyrone has agreed to complete it in real time. Tyrone hadn't agreed. He'd been told. The class exchanged looks. Caleb smirked. Lauren whispered something to Zoe, both stifling giggles. But Tyrone walked forward silently, notebook in hand. Every step toward the whiteboard felt heavier than the last. Mrs. Thornton handed him a marker like it was a weapon she didn't expect him to use well. You'll have 15 minutes, she said crisply. Begin. He faced the board. 7 problems. All harder than anything they'd seen. He felt the pressure crawling up his neck, hot and itching. But he remembered Simone's voice from that morning. Do what you do best, baby. Let the numbers speak. Tyrone uncapped the marker. He started with the matrix transformation. Quick strokes. Careful numbers. Then the nonlinear inequality. He graphically shaded the correct regions. As he moved from one problem to the next, the classroom's snickers faded. One by one, the students sat up straighter. Lauren stopped whispering. Caleb leaned forward. Even Mrs. Thornton blinked twice. By minute 7, 5 questions were complete. By minute 11, all 7 had clear, precise answers. Tyrone stepped back. Marker cap clicking shut. Silence. Mrs. Thornton stepped forward. Her face remained unreadable, but her eyes scanned each solution, each operation. Her fingers clutched the clipboard tighter. Interesting, she murmured. The silence cracked with Caleb's voice. Did he just finish that? All of it? Mrs. Thornton didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the class. These are high school level problems. Some college prep. I did not expect them all to be solved this quickly. Tyrone took a step back, heart still racing. He'd done it. He'd played her game and won. But then came the pivot. Which makes this, Mrs. Thornton's voice cooled, a bit suspicious. The room turned cold. She gestured toward Tyrone's solutions. I can't prove anything right now, but it's worth reviewing. The speed, the accuracy, the way certain methods are used. One's not taught at this level. She trailed off, letting her doubts infect the room like a virus. Tyrone's lips parted, but he couldn't speak. He wanted to scream, to say, you made the rules, and I played by them. You gave me the impossible, and I made it real. But he said nothing, because he knew the danger of speaking while black and angry in a white classroom. Mrs. Thornton smiled tightly. For now, Tyrone, please head to the principal's office. I'd like Mr. Howard to have a look. Some students gasped. Others chuckled nervously. Tyrone turned, feeling every eye drilling into his back as he walked out. Down the hallway, the walls felt closer, the buzzing in his ears returned. Mr. Howard greeted him with the same bland expression he always wore. Mrs. Thornton called ahead, said there were concerns. He offered Tyrone a seat, then pulled out a notepad. She says your solutions don't reflect work she's seen from you before. That you might have used unauthorized methods. What kind of methods? Tyrone asked, his voice even. Did you use a phone? AI tools? Anything unapproved? I didn't cheat. Mr. Howard nodded slowly, as if trying to decode him. We'll need to call your mother. Standard protocol. Tyrone sat stiffly, waiting in silence. He didn't even flinch when Simone arrived, her face taut but composed. She looked from Tyrone to the principal. What happened? Mr. Howard cleared his throat. There was a math demonstration. Tyrone solved problems much faster than expected. It raised questions. Questions, Simone echoed. He solved the problems. Accurately. In front of witnesses. And instead of praise, you called me here like he brought a weapon to school? It's not that simple, he replied. There are procedures. There are patterns, Simone snapped. Patterns where black students are punished for excellence, instead of nurtured for it. He shifted in his chair. Please, Mrs. Ellis, we're only trying to maintain academic integrity. Simone looked at Tyrone. Baby, tell me exactly what happened. Tyrone recounted the whole thing. The silence in the room grew louder with every sentence. When he finished, Simone stood up. I want the test reviewed. Independently. Not by this school. By an external math evaluator. Mr. Howard paused. That's not standard. It wasn't standard to ambush a 12-year-old with a live demonstration either. She said coldly. You want transparency? Let's get it. He nodded stiffly. We'll reach out to the district office. But please understand, if misconduct is found, Simone cut in. If misconduct is found, it won't be from this side of the table. Later that evening, she filed a formal request for independent review with the district. She even copied the school board and attached screenshots of Tyrone's notes from weeks prior. Proof that he'd been doing problems at that level already. For a moment she allowed herself to breathe. They'd tried to embarrass her son. Instead, he'd showcased brilliance. But 3 days later, the district's response arrived. Thank you for your concern. However, after preliminary internal checks, we have decided that the student in question should not be recommended for the gifted program at this time, due to ongoing academic integrity concerns. Further review has been deferred. Deferred, not denied, not clear, just shelved. It wasn't just a rejection. It was a label. One that would follow Tyrone across records, across schools, across futures. Simone read the email twice. Her hands trembled. Tyrone was in his room, headphones on, building an algorithm to calculate chess move trees, oblivious. She closed her laptop slowly. Simone demands an independent review of the test, and gets a brutal surprise. The rejection email sat in Simone's inbox like a slap that kept stinging. She reread the words again, just to make sure she wasn't imagining the tone. Ongoing academic integrity concern. They didn't outright accuse Tyrone of cheating, but they didn't clear him either. Worse, they deferred review, placing her son's academic reputation in a silent limbo with no resolution, no path forward. Simone didn't cry, not yet. She stared at the screen, jaw clenched, pulse hammering in her neck. The email wasn't just a verdict, it was a message. We don't believe your son belongs here. Down the hall, Tyrone was still tinkering with a logic-based chess simulator, humming lightly to himself. He didn't know yet. Simone didn't know how to tell him. She had protected him from many things. Growing up without a father, money being tight, even racism's ugly whispers. But this was different. This was official. This was institutional. The next morning she woke early and emailed the district again, this time demanding a timeline for the independent review. Hours passed with no reply. By afternoon, her phone rang. It was an assistant superintendent. Mrs. Ellis, we've reviewed your request. At this time, we believe it is in the best interest of the student to focus on classroom-based support and monitoring. So the school accuses my son without proof, and now you're suggesting monitoring instead of clearing his name? Simone asked, her voice sharp. There's no formal accusation. It's just about maintaining classroom standards. Let me be clear, Simone said. You're telling me that my son, who solved every problem correctly in front of an entire classroom, is now being monitored for being too good. There was a pause. It's complicated, the voice on the phone replied. We're simply taking steps to ensure fairness for all students. Simone hung up without saying goodbye. At school, the temperature around Tyrone shifted. Mrs. Thornton no longer offered backhanded compliments. She stopped acknowledging him altogether. When he raised his hand, she looked past it. When he submitted homework, it was returned without comments or scores. At lunch, a few kids began whispering again. Thought he was some genius. Probably just looked it all up. I heard his mom's making a big deal out of it. Trying to sue the school or something. Tyrone heard every word but didn't react. Not outwardly. Inside, he felt a slow unraveling. All the excitement he once felt about numbers, about puzzles, about school, it dulled. The board was rigged. The rules weren't made for him to win. Simone decided she'd had enough. She compiled every homework assignment, every red-marked test with Tyrone's flawless logic discounted. She printed emails, screenshots from math forums where Tyrone had participated under anonymous usernames, proving his aptitude. She even drafted a formal complaint to the Department of Education. But something still didn't feel like enough. She needed eyes on this. Public ones. That night, while Tyrone slept, Simone created a simple blog. They tried to bury genius. She uploaded a timeline of events, documents, anonymized classroom observations, and even video footage from a parent who had secretly recorded Tyrone's demonstration on the board. The clip showed him solving problems fluidly, while Mrs. Thornton stood beside him, arms crossed, not offering a single word of encouragement. Within 48 hours, the blog post gained traction. Parents began sharing it in PTA groups. A local activist reposted it. A former Jefferson student left a comment, "This sounds just like my time with Thornton. Some things never change." And then, the unexpected twist. A well-known educational YouTuber stumbled across the post. He reached out to Simone, asking if he could verify Tyrone's work himself. She agreed. Tyrone, hesitant at first, eventually agreed too, but insisted it be on his terms. He submitted a blind, self-written test to the YouTuber's panel of math experts, PhDs, educators, even a former Olympiad coach. The results were unanimous. "This kid is brilliant," the YouTuber said in his video. "He didn't cheat, he just thinks at a level the system wasn't prepared for." The video exploded. 200,000 views overnight, then 500,000. Suddenly, Tyrone Ellis wasn't a whispered name in a Missouri middle school. He was trending, but not everyone was pleased. Mrs. Thornton sent a formal statement to the district, claiming the video was unverified, and that online popularity should not determine educational outcomes. The school's response: they opened a disciplinary review, not against her but Tyrone. Simone received the email late one evening. Due to the recent media attention and possible FERPA violations, the district will be conducting an internal investigation regarding student conduct, data sharing, and academic protocol adherence. They were flipping the script, turning a victim into a suspect. Simone stood in her kitchen, the walls spinning. Tyrone walked in, catching her distress. "What now?" he asked, too calm for someone his age. "They're investigating you," she said quietly. He nodded once, jaw tightening. "I knew they would," he replied. Simone collapsed into a chair. "We're not just fighting ignorance anymore, baby. We're fighting a machine. The school launches a disciplinary review, not to clear Tyrone, but to investigate him instead." Tyrone stopped speaking up at school. He moved through Jefferson's halls like a ghost, drifting from class to class, eyes down, voice low. Teachers no longer looked at him the same. His classmates whispered less, but stared more. He wasn't a kid who'd embarrass the teacher anymore. He was the one being investigated. The label clung to him like smoke. But at home, in his own world, Tyrone was someone else entirely. His bedroom became a laboratory of logic. Notebooks, lined with cryptic symbols, stacked against his desk. His computer monitor stayed lit until midnight, glowing with spreadsheets, code snippets, and math forums buried deep in the web's educational corners. He didn't log on as Tyrone Ellis. He had created a new identity, one that couldn't be tracked, profiled, or questioned. Black Phi 9, a name rooted in secrecy and strength. Phi for the golden ratio, 9 for the age he first cracked calculus concepts. The name was a mask, but also a weapon. Black Phi 9 didn't speak. He solved. He posted a puzzle involving hyperbolic trigonometry, one so convoluted it had stumped users on professional forums. His solution didn't just answer the problem, it reframed it. Users from Stanford and MIT tried to pick it apart, only to realize they'd been outmatched.
Then came the domino.
A well-known STEM influencer reposted his solution, asking, "Has anyone verified this? It's incredible." That night, Tyrone's post hit 12,000 upvotes on an advanced math subreddit. By morning, Twitter was buzzing. "Who is Black Phi 9? Best mathematical intuition I've seen in years." Then a Harvard professor tweeted, "Whoever Black Phi 9 is, they're solving problems I've never even taught. Brilliant." Tyrone stared at the screen, stunned. For once he didn't feel like shrinking. He felt seen, but not as Tyrone Ellis. Not as the boy Jefferson was quietly suffocating. As Black Phi 9, he was limitless. Simone noticed the change. She heard his late-night typing again, saw the light return to his eyes. She didn't ask. She let him come to her. "Mom," he said one morning, holding up his tablet, "I've been posting stuff, anonymously, and they noticed." She sat beside him and scrolled through the responses, her mouth parting slightly. "You did this?" He nodded. A message arrived right then. A direct email routed through the contact form on a math forum. A professor from the University of Illinois wrote, "Black Phi 9, we don't know who you are, but if you're interested, we'd like to offer you a pre-college mentorship opportunity. Fully funded." Tyrone blinked. I didn't even apply." "They found you," Simone whispered. But even as doors were cracking open, reality at Jefferson remained sealed shut. 1 week later, Mrs. Thornton returned to class with an extra spring in her step. A student mentioned the viral post about Black Phi 9 during a warm-up exercise. Someone said, "There's a kid out there doing college-level math anonymously. He got offered a scholarship." Mrs. Thornton laughed, not harshly, but with that same familiar bite. "Oh, please," she said. "The internet loves a mystery. That Black Phi 9 thing. Probably some adult pretending to be a kid, or someone cheating their way through solutions." Tyrone didn't flinch. He kept his eyes on his notebook. Simone's words echoed in his ears. "Sometimes your silence is your sharpest blade." But later that evening, as they sat together over dinner, Simone couldn't shake the bitterness from her face. "They're not just trying to discredit your name anymore, baby. They're trying to erase your mind." Tyrone looked up. "But they don't know it's me." "Exactly," she said, sitting forward. "That's the problem." He frowned. "You think I should tell them?" "No. I think I should." "What?" Simone pushed her laptop forward. She had been drafting a press release. "You earned that spotlight, Tyrone. The world already loves your mind. They just don't know the name behind it. If they knew the same kid their schools dismissed is the one being offered scholarships without ever applying, that changes everything." Tyrone hesitated. "Won't it make things worse?" "They've already made it worse," Simone replied. "Now we tell the truth, on our terms." That night, Simone contacted the same education YouTuber who had covered Tyrone's anonymous test. She arranged an interview. Not written. Not edited. Live, Simone decides to expose the school by revealing Black Phi 9's identity. In a live interview. Simone Ellis had been quiet long enough. She wasn't just a mother now. She was a woman on fire. The rage that simmered behind her eyes had turned into something deliberate, organized, and unstoppable. For weeks she had watched her son be dragged through an invisible trial with no courtroom, no jury, and no defense. But now she was going to flip the script, and she was starting with receipts. Tyrone watched from the hallway, as Simone sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by documents. Her laptop glowed, her face lit by the cold light of injustice being processed into evidence. She wasn't just collecting emails anymore. She was building a case. There were screenshots of Tyrone's spotless test papers, red-marked only for formatting. Email threads from Mrs. Thornton that carried polite racism masked in bureaucratic language. Surveillance timestamps showing that Tyrone completed the in-class test under real-time pressure, yet was still flagged for dishonesty. The folder was labeled proof they never believed him. Then she launched a blog. Simple design, piercing message. Its title, "The Genius They Tried to Erase." The first post opened with a line that struck like thunder. "My son is 12 years old. He solved problems they didn't teach, so they tried to fail him for it." She attached the full story. The quiz ambush, the swapped test, the disciplinary review, and finally his viral success as Black Phi 9. Nothing was dramatized. No embellishments, just cold facts, backed by files, photos, and video clips. The internet didn't scroll past. The post racked up 10,000 shares in its first night. Parents, teachers, former students of Jefferson commented in droves. I had Mrs. Thornton too. Same tactics. My gifted black son was told to repeat 5th grade math. This story feels too familiar. Local media picked it up first. Then the National Education Podcast, Truth in the Classroom, requested an interview. Simone didn't hesitate. On camera, she was calm but piercing. When black excellence threatens the comfort of mediocrity, the system doesn't just ignore it, it attacks it. They didn't question my son because he was wrong. They questioned him because he was right. Clips from the interview spread like wildfire. Tyrone watched himself become a symbol, his name now a tag beneath bold headlines. Boy genius silenced by school district. Mom's fight for her son goes viral. Jefferson Middle went into PR overdrive. A press release dropped the next morning. We are deeply committed to equity and inclusion for all students. Any accusations of bias are being taken seriously. But their statement ended with a pointed line. We ask the public to allow the internal process to complete before drawing conclusions. Translation: let us protect our own before accountability knocks on the door. Mrs. Thornton didn't comment publicly, but parents at the school reported she now walked the halls with forced politeness and security close behind. It should have felt like a win. But the higher Simone rose, the more brutal the backlash became. Her office inbox at the tech firm began flooding with anonymous messages. Focus on your job, not your agenda. Using your son to push a narrative. How classy. 3 days later, HR called Simone in. Due to the attention your blog has generated, we're placing you on paid administrative leave. Leave? She said, stunned. For exposing racism? We're not taking a position, the HR rep replied, eyes avoiding hers. We just need to avoid reputational risk. She walked out of that office with her fists clenched. At home, Tyrone noticed the silence. You got fired? No, Simone said, exhaling. Just punished for telling the truth. But she didn't stop. She doubled down. She created a submission form on her blog. Tell us your story. Within a week, 600 parents and students had shared accounts of academic discrimination. The stories mirrored Tyrone's. Harder tests, ignored hands, accusations of cheating, praise withheld. The truth wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, but the weight of visibility came with pressure. One morning, Simone woke to the sound of a brick smashing the front window. On it, someone had spray painted, "Shut up or leave." The police arrived, but their report felt more like a shrug than a shield. Probably just a random act. Could be kids. Simone knew better. She changed the locks that night. Meanwhile, Tyrone still wasn't reinstated in school competitions. Despite his online acclaim, he was barred from the upcoming regional math Olympiad. Simone had assumed it was an oversight, until she received the email. The message came from the state math board. Due to ongoing investigations involving academic conduct, Tyrone Ellis is ineligible for participation in all district and state-sanctioned academic contests, until further notice. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled down. The email was cold, clinical, and devastating. It wasn't just the regional math event, it was every academic platform in the state. Tyrone wasn't just banned from math club. He was erased from opportunity. She stormed into his room, laptop open. Baby, I need you to read this. Tyrone scanned the message. His face didn't show anger. It showed resignation. I figured they'd do that, he said softly. No, Simone snapped. No, they don't get to do that. You're Black Phenine. Tyrone, the world knows you. They can't stop you anymore. But they can keep me out of rooms, he replied. Rooms I deserve to be in. Simone's eyes glistened, but she refused to cry. Then we'll build our own room, she said, and make them beg to be in yours. The board cites ongoing investigations and suspends Tyrone from all academic contests statewide. The dining room table became Tyrone's new classroom, not by choice, but by necessity. Simone couldn't bear to send him back to Jefferson. Not after the suspension, the graffiti, the media chaos, and the bitter silence that echoed louder than any racial slur. She pulled him from the school formally, marked it as temporary homeschooling, and gathered every resource she could find online. She wasn't a certified teacher, but no one knew Tyrone's mind better than she did. Every morning, they started with tea. No bells, no hall passes, just a quiet structure. Math, physics, reading, coding. Tyrone didn't resist. In fact, he thrived. He consumed knowledge like oxygen. But something had shifted. He didn't talk as much during lessons. Didn't laugh at Simone's old jokes the way he used to. There was a focus in his eyes now, intense and deliberate. It wasn't rebellion. It was a child turned into a machine by the system meant to nurture him. By the second week, Tyrone had mapped out an entire self-study curriculum. Why wait for them to teach me? He told Simone. I can build my own path. And he did. He used open-source Python libraries to construct a mini AI model capable of pattern recognition. He fed it test questions and wrote scripts to optimize solutions. Then, under a new alias, Code Obsidian, he began entering online STEM challenges. He didn't just compete, he won. A physics tournament for high schoolers, a robotics simulation challenge, a combinatorics marathon, hosted by a university in Canada. Tyrone, still only 12, ranked top 10 in all of them, and first in two. Each win came with silent celebration. Simone would bring out cupcakes, try to coax a smile. Tyrone would nod politely, but keep his head down, already on the next problem. The deeper he dove into his online success, the more aggressive the offline attacks became. Simone started getting odd emails. One, from a masked address, read, "Funny how the loudest moms are usually the ones who failed at raising kids." Another, "Hope your audit goes well. District records are never really deleted." Then came a knock at their door. A man in a suit, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Ellis? I'm here for a routine check regarding your son's academic withdrawal. Standard district follow-up." Simone narrowed her eyes. "Since when does the district conduct unscheduled home visits? Without notice. We're just making sure homeschooling guidelines are being followed." She refused entry. 2 days later, an email arrived. Notice of a pending audit into Simone's former public grant applications, tied to her data analytics work from 3 years ago. No charges, just questions. "They're reaching," she whispered to herself, rereading the notice. "They're trying to break me." Tyrone noticed the tension. He noticed her late-night phone calls, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she clutched her chest when another anonymous email arrived. He walked in on her one night, sitting in the laundry room, lights off, shoulders shaking. "Mom?" She wiped her face fast. "Just tired, baby."
You're crying.
"No, I'm not. I'm just..." "You don't have to lie. I hear you every night." Her face crumpled, honesty forcing its way through the cracks. "I don't know how much longer I can hold all of this. The wins don't even feel like wins anymore." Tyrone knelt beside her, voice steady. "Then we take a break." "No," she said immediately. "That's what they want. For us to vanish. But what if we just breathe? What if I stop all the online stuff for now?" She looked at him. "You shouldn't have to choose between brilliance and peace." He didn't respond, because he already had. The next morning, Tyrone deleted all his active aliases. Code Obsidian. Black Phi 9. Every forum profile, every contest thread. Gone. Simone didn't fight him, but she mourned it. Her son's genius was no longer hidden. It was buried. By force. Days passed slowly. The apartment felt quieter than usual, until a message came that shattered the silence. It was an email, but not from a troll. Not from the district. Subject line: "Let's talk about the future." From Jeremiah Kessler, founder of Equitech, a rising AI company in Silicon Valley. Tyrone stared at the screen. Simone read over his shoulder. "We've been following your work since the Code Obsidian submissions. I figured out who you were. Not to expose you, but to understand how someone that young could outperform seasoned engineers. I don't know what's going on in Missouri, but from where I'm sitting, you're the most promising computational mind I've seen in a decade. I'd like to fly you and your mother out to California. We have something we'd like to build with you." Tyrone's hands went cold. Simone covered her mouth. He whispered, "Is this real?" She checked the domain, checked the signature, Googled the company. Yes, it was real. A Silicon Valley founder messages Tyrone privately, offering to fly him to California. The first time Tyrone Ellis stepped foot on a plane, he didn't look nervous. He looked focused. He sat by the window, watching the clouds cut like silk beneath the wings, a quiet storm behind his eyes. Simone sat beside him, clutching her seatbelt, unsure if she was flying toward an opportunity or into a trap disguised as one. Equitech had handled everything: first-class tickets, hotel arrangements, even a travel liaison waiting at San Francisco International, with a sign that read, "Ellis Family Equitech Guest." They were ushered into a black car with tinted windows, then driven straight to Palo Alto, where glass buildings gleamed like altars and billion-dollar ideas floated in the air like pollen. Simone stared at it, all in disbelief. "This is where the people who ignored you take their vacations," she whispered. Tyrone's jaw clenched, but he didn't reply. The summit took place in a minimalist tech hall, wrapped in steel and light. Tyrone stood out instantly, not just because he was one of the youngest, but because he was the only black student in the room. Everyone else wore private school name tags, accompanied by mentors, teachers, or entire teams. Tyrone had Simone, and the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove, but everything to reclaim. When he checked in, a young intern asked, "And what school are you representing?" Tyrone replied simply, "None." That answer echoed louder than it should have. The keynote was flooded with presentations, code breakthroughs, machine learning models, climate solutions. All impressive, all rehearsed, all safe. Then came Tyrone. He didn't walk in with a slideshow. He walked in with a whiteboard and a marker. "Today," he began, "I'll be solving a game theory problem that hasn't been cracked in 3 years." A hum moved through the audience. Simone sat in the back row, her fists clenched under her coat. Tyrone laid out the rules of the puzzle, a three-dimensional optimization challenge, involving incomplete information. He explained the logic tree, ran the variable shifts, and used combinatorial proofs, all from memory. 25 minutes later, he stood back. The board was filled with clean math. Bold conclusions. Silent.
Then applause.
Not polite. Thunderous. One of the judges, a venture capitalist named Alden Price, stood up mid-clap. "Son," he said aloud, "I don't know who taught you, but I've seen Stanford seniors crack under easier logic. I'm interested in funding whatever you build next." Reporters in the crowd turned their cameras. That night, Tyrone's name trended. The black kid who solved the game. Unschooling genius stuns tech world. Social media exploded with praise. But not everyone was applauding. A journalist from a major digital magazine began digging into Tyrone's background. His name rang a bell. Wasn't that the same kid from Missouri? The one involved in the cheating scandal at Jefferson Middle? She sent quiet emails. Made calls. Then, on the third day of the summit, it happened. The headline dropped. "Accused math fraud turns tech prodigy. Is the system broken?" Tyrone opened his phone and froze. Simone read the headline, her stomach turning. The article was brutal. Written in the language of faux neutrality, it questioned the credibility of Black Fi-Nye's earlier posts. It referenced the district's ongoing investigation. It mentioned the math midterm scandal, carefully avoiding words like racism, but heavily implying doubt. And it included a screenshot of his face at the summit, side by side with a redacted Jefferson School report. Tyrone's identity was no longer his to protect. The room shifted. The same VC who'd offered to fund him sent a text. "Let's talk next week. Need to let this press calm down." Simone stormed down to the lobby, demanding answers. Who leaked this? Why now? No one knew, or so they claimed. Tyrone didn't say a word for the next 2 hours. Then, quietly, he turned to his mother. "I gave them something to break. And they did." Simone touched his cheek. "That's because you're finally too loud to ignore." The headline hit social media. "Accused math fraud turns tech prodigy. Is the system broken? The internet is merciless when it smells blood." The article exploded across platforms within hours. Tyrone Ellis, once hidden under usernames and anonymity, was now front-page controversy. The summit stage that had once elevated him now became a platform for debate, not about his ideas, but about his legitimacy. Cable news picked it up first. Was the math prodigy a manufactured genius? One anchor teased. Pundits argued loudly, with buzzwords like standards, merit, and educational integrity. None of them mentioned race, but all of them talked around it. Social media fractured into camps. One side hailed Tyrone as a beacon of untapped potential, the systemic proof that talent often goes ignored in marginalized communities. The other side began circulating conspiracy theories, that Simone had used media pressure to bully her way into opportunity, that Tyrone was coached behind the scenes, that his viral posts were ghost-written. Simone watched it all unfold like slow-motion wreckage. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," she whispered to herself, scrolling through comment sections flooded with coded slurs and outright hate. The hate spilled offline too. Tyrone's personal data leaked. His old address, his birthday, even his middle school transcripts. Trolls sent pizzas to their home, harassing them through every open channel. Simone started receiving phone calls with long silences on the other end. Tyrone's inbox filled with requests for interviews, debates, proof of his intelligence, as though his brilliance had become a public property to be audited. Despite it all, he stayed grounded. "I don't care what they say," he told his mother. "I just want to keep building. That's all I ever wanted." Simone forced a smile. "Then we stay the course." But staying the course meant weathering the storm, and the next hit came fast. Jefferson Middle released a statement to local press. While we support the accomplishments of all our former students, we wish to remind the community that academic misconduct remains a serious concern. Our internal protocols were followed accordingly. It was subtle but surgical. The school wasn't clearing Tyrone. They were preserving themselves. Within hours, more interviews aired. A former Jefferson parent claimed Simone had always been pushy, that Tyrone had always seemed a little too advanced to be believable. Another clip resurfaced of Mrs. Thornton, giving a speech 2 years earlier, praising rigorous accountability in gifted programs. Simone's phone buzzed again. This time it was from a law firm in New York. "We'd like to represent you," the voice said. "Your son's case isn't just a school issue, it's a civil rights issue." Simone listened, but didn't answer yet. Her instincts weren't about lawsuits. They were about survival. Then something changed. A tweet from a former Jefferson student went viral. "I was in the same class as Tyrone Ellis. They used to change his homework. I saw it. He wasn't cheating. He was targeted." Another student replied, "Same. I filed a complaint once. Nothing happened." Suddenly, the silence broke. The Department of Education's Civil Rights Division reached out. They were opening a federal investigation into Jefferson Middle School. It was the kind of announcement that made headlines. News tickers ran it within the hour. "Feds investigate school accused of silencing black genius." Simone sat back, numb. Tyrone, quiet as ever, stared at the TV.
"What happens now?"
he asked. She didn't answer right away. Because even victory came with a price. The comments hadn't stopped. The threats hadn't stopped. And neither had the whispers that they were just playing a card. Just leveraging race. But the story was no longer just about Tyrone. The petition started circulating. Over 2 million signatures demanded the resignation of Mrs. Thornton. Educators and activists rallied under the hashtag #LetHimLearn. Videos of Tyrone's summit presentation were shared again and again. Still, the pain wasn't over. Late one night, Simone opened the front door to find a white envelope taped to it. No name, no stamp. Inside was a printed page, one of her old tweets, one where she called out systemic racism in education. Across the tweet, someone had written in red marker, "This is why we don't want your kind in our schools." Simone finds a threatening note taped to their front door. The hearings began under the buzz of fluorescent lights and the low hum of distant cameras. In a federal building in downtown St. Louis, the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights assembled its panel. The room wasn't designed to be cinematic, but it felt like a courtroom drama, and the name echoing through every hallway. Tyrone Ellis was no longer just the subject of controversy. He had become the lens through which America examined its own educational disease. Simone walked through the marble lobby, gripping a folder that had grown thick with evidence. Tyrone trailed beside her, his backpack hugged to his chest. He didn't speak. Neither did she. There was nothing left to say. Today wasn't about proving he was gifted. It was about proving he had been wronged. Jefferson Middle's legal team sat stiffly at one end of the chamber, flanked by school board members and attorneys in dark suits. Mrs. Thornton was there too. She wore a navy blazer and a pearl necklace, her hair pinned up in meticulous curl. She looked every bit the seasoned professional, until she opened her mouth. "I never punished Tyrone Ellis for his intelligence," she said under oath, voice smooth. "If anything, I challenged him because I believed in his potential. High expectations, not hostility." It was a polished line, the kind you rehearse in front of a mirror. But then the documents were projected on the overhead screen. Emails Mrs. Thornton never thought would surface. "The Ellis boy is quick, but too smug. I want to see how far he can go before he cracks. Maybe if we turn up the pressure, we'll get a clearer picture of whether it's real talent or just rehearsed tricks." Gasps rippled through the room. Mrs. Thornton's expression shifted for the first time. Not guilt, not fear, just calculation. The DOE attorneys pressed in. "Why did you assign higher-level problems to only one student, without parental notification?" "I was tailoring instruction." "Then why are there no records of such differentiation for any other student? Why is Tyrone the only one mentioned in emails, questioning their legitimacy?" Her silence said more than any answer could. But it wasn't just about her. The floodgates opened. Former students testified, one after another. A black girl named Kira recounted being penalized for talking too much when she asked questions. A Latino student shared how his gifted track application mysteriously disappeared. The pattern wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. methodical, institutional. A former white staff member, a retired math teacher, sat down and took a breath before speaking. There were jokes in the lounge about Tyrone, about how he was too smart for his own good. We all heard them, and we didn't stop them. I didn't stop them. The silence that followed was heavier than testimony. The DOE presented school data, disciplinary referrals broken down by race, advanced math recommendations, teacher referrals. All of it laid bare one undeniable truth. Jefferson Middle had been filtering out black brilliance with surgical precision. At one point, a school board member tried to deflect. This has been an emotionally charged situation. We believe all our teachers acted with professional intent. But another slide went up. A group chat between 3 teachers, including Mrs. Thornton. Let's not let the media circus distract from the fact that this kid's just being handled. Handled. That word hit like a slap. The room buzzed with tension. And yet through all of it, Tyrone sat still. Simone held his hand, but her other hand gripped her folder like a weapon. They had done it. They had peeled the mask off the school, exposed the rot beneath the banners of equity and diversity. Reporters filled the hallway. Education activists gathered outside. A petition to recall the school board reached over 700,000 signatures. Still, Jefferson's legal team clung to phrases like miscommunication and policy missteps. But it was too late. The Department of Education prepared to release its findings the following week. The preliminary results were already clear. Jefferson Middle had engaged in discriminatory practices. Simone breathed, just for a moment. Then came the unexpected twist. An officer from the DOE approached her in the hallway. "We'd like to request a testimony from Tyrone," she said gently. "His voice has been central to this case. It matters how he experienced it." Simone looked at her son. He didn't flinch. He just nodded. "I'll do it." The DOE prepares to release its findings, and Tyrone is asked to testify. The room was built for order. Everything in the federal hearing chamber, from the symmetrical placement of chairs to the pristine white tablecloths on the witness tables, suggested control. But what pulsed beneath the surface was anything but contained. Tyrone Ellis, now 13, walked into that room like a soldier entering a battlefield. Not with fear, but with focus. His shirt was pressed, his sneakers clean, his eyes steady. The cameras were already trained on the seat at the center of the room, and as he took it, Simone sat behind him, unable to blink. Her boy, once just another student buried in the back row, was now the centerpiece of a national reckoning. The Department of Education had opened the civil rights inquiry a month earlier, but it was Tyrone's testimony that the world had waited for. His voice had remained silent publicly since the chaos began. But now the nation would hear the boy behind the hashtags, behind the headlines, behind the pain. He adjusted the mic, cleared his throat. "My name is Tyrone Ellis," he began, each word deliberate. "I used to go to Jefferson Middle School. I used to love school. I used to love learning." A hush settled. "But then I was told that being good at something made me suspicious." He paused. The silence wasn't just from the officials. It came from every reporter's pen, every camera operator holding their breath. "I was 12 when my teacher gave me a math problem harder than what anyone else got. I solved it." She didn't say "well done." She said, "do it again." In front of the class, to prove I didn't cheat. He didn't cry. He didn't tremble. Tyrone delivered every memory with the calm clinical precision of a surgeon exposing a wound. "I solved that too." She still didn't believe me. She told the principal, then the district. Then they called my mom. But not to say I was smart. To say I was suspicious. Simone looked down, her hand shaking. She had prepared herself to hear it again. But nothing could mute the heartbreak in her son's voice. "They told me to be quiet, to stop posting online, to stop being public, because smart isn't safe when you look like me." They said it in nicer words, but I heard them. Tyrone took a breath. "I didn't get suspended for breaking rules. I got suspended because I broke their expectations." That line hit like a punch. A murmur rippled across the chamber. Tyrone continued. "After that, they called me a cheater. Online, people said I was a fraud, that my mom was forcing me, that I couldn't be that smart without lying. They hacked my accounts. They sent hate to our home. They said I was dangerous." He held up a printed screenshot of one of the messages. "One mistake, and he disappears like he never existed. That was sent to my house. About me." One of the panel members shifted, visibly disturbed. Another whispered something to the official beside them. Tyrone didn't look away. I was just a kid who liked math. I didn't ask to be on TV. I didn't ask to be a symbol. I didn't ask for a hearing. I just asked to be believed. A long pause. My teacher, Mrs. Thornton, didn't give me harder problems to help me. She gave them to me to break me. She said she wanted to see how far I could go before I cracked. She almost did. I stopped eating right. I stopped talking. I deleted everything I created, because I thought it wasn't safe to be smart anymore. The room was silent. Simone's tears finally fell. She covered her mouth with her hand. But I didn't crack, Tyrone said, because I'm not the problem. The system is. At that moment, the chamber seemed to collapse into silence. A silence that wasn't passive. It was stunned. Still, reverent. Then applause. Not from everyone, but enough to ripple across the room before officials called for quiet. The clip hit the internet before the hearing even ended. Journalists live tweeted it. One educator posted, "Tyrone Ellis didn't just testify, he testified for every black student who was ever doubted, dismissed, or degraded for being brilliant." That night, the video had over 3.5 million views. By morning, 10 million. Influencers made videos crying, reacting. Celebrities reposted with captions like, "They tried to erase him. He wrote himself back in." Activists praised Simone's courage. Professors asked to feature Tyrone's words in their lectures. But with every ounce of love came equal weight in hate. Mrs. Thornton's supporters mobilized online. Anonymous forums swarmed to defend teacher integrity. They claimed the hearing was a witch hunt, that Simone had orchestrated the entire media frenzy for attention, that Tyrone was an AI chatbot in disguise. The racism grew bolder. Someone leaked Simone's workplace history. Doctored emails began circulating claiming she'd falsified data in a past project. None of it was true. But truth didn't matter in the digital mob. Then came the threats. Phone calls in the middle of the night. Packages left on their doorstep containing nothing but blank paper and red ink. One note read, "We see everything. Your genius isn't bulletproof."
They filed police reports. Again.
"I'm not scared," Tyrone told his mother. But Simone saw the extra lock he added to his bedroom window. She saw the way he jumped at sudden knocks. And then, another twist. A well-known conservative pundit invited Tyrone on his show. "We want to hear the other side," the producer said. Simone declined. The next day, the pundit aired a segment anyway. "Tyrone Ellis is being used. It's child abuse disguised as advocacy. His mother should be investigated." Simone watched it play on a loop. Tyrone didn't say a word. Until he did. "I want to talk," he told her. "But not to defend myself. To lead." Together they planned a live stream. Tyrone, sitting in front of his own laptop, told his story again. Unfiltered, uninterrupted. "I know you think this is about me," he said to the camera. "But it's not. It's about what happens when a system built to lift us decides we're too heavy to carry. I won't apologize for being smart. I won't shrink to survive." The stream reached over 1.2 million viewers in 48 hours. By then, national organizations began calling Simone. Civil rights groups, education reformists, publishers. They all wanted to work with Tyrone. Still, Jefferson Middle hadn't issued a direct apology. Then Simone received a letter. The school's legal counsel was filing a lawsuit for defamation. They claimed her blog, interviews, and public statements had caused extensive reputational damage, that her words had recklessly endangered the professional standing of respected educators. Simone stood in her kitchen, the legal packet spread on the counter like broken glass. "They're suing me," she said aloud, to no one. Tyrone walked in. "What?" "They want money. They want silence. They want me to be sorry." He looked at the papers. "They should be the ones sorry." She nodded. "They will be." Simone finds a threatening note taped to their front door. The morning after the note appeared, Simone didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, staring at the front door like it might whisper answers. Tyrone woke up early, sensing the shift in the air. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. The silence was enough. By the end of that week, the hate had grown teeth. It started with anonymous messages flooding Simone's inbox again, this time sharper, more coordinated. One email read, "You wanted attention. Now you've got it." Another, "The world doesn't need another fake martyr." They came from fake accounts, but the language was familiar. the same tone as the whispers she'd heard in Jefferson's hallways. Then came the doxing. Their address leaked on social media, hidden within discussion threads about Tyrone's case. Within hours, it spread to forums that thrived on harassment. Old family photos appeared online, their phone number, even a photo of Tyrone's school project, one he'd proudly posted years ago. That night, a rock shattered their front window. Tyrone ran to the sound, heart racing, while Simone grabbed him by the arm. "Stay back," she shouted, scanning the darkness outside. The word liars had been spray-painted across the siding, in dripping red letters. The police came again. They took statements, wrote reports, but their tone was routine, not protective. One officer muttered, "You two might want to lay low for a while." Simone wanted to scream. Lay low was what they'd been told their whole lives. It was what her parents were told, what Tyrone had been forced to learn by 12. Instead, she fixed the window herself the next morning, hand trembling around the hammer. Tyrone helped patch the paint. Neither of them spoke about fear anymore. It had become part of the background noise. But the attacks didn't stop there. Within days, Tyrone's online profiles, his math forum accounts, his gaming handles, were hacked. His posts were replaced with racial slurs. His inbox flooded with messages calling him a fraud, a diversity mascot, a manufactured genius. Simone reported the hacks, filed tickets with the sites, even reached out to a cybersecurity lawyer. The response was polite but detached. "These things happen when a story goes viral," they told her. When a story goes viral, as if hate was a natural side effect of visibility. One evening, Simone found Tyrone sitting in front of his darkened computer screen. The cursor blinked at an empty page. "I deleted everything," he said softly. "Everything? My code, my projects, even the summit presentations." Simone's voice broke. "Why would you?" "They'll twist it anyway," he said, eyes distant. "They'll use anything I make against me. It's not worth it." Her hands shook. "Tyrone, your work is worth it. You are worth it." He didn't respond. That night she heard him crying quietly through his door. A sound no mother ever forgets. It wasn't loud. It was strangled, controlled, like he was trying not to wake her. The next day, Simone made a call. To the one person who had believed in Tyrone from the beginning. The Silicon Valley founder Jeremiah Kessler. He listened in silence, then said, "Let's build something they can't erase." Within weeks, Tyrone was back online. But this time, it wasn't for himself. It was for others. Together with Kessler's edtech firm, Tyrone designed a free online platform called Open Mind, a math hub where kids, especially students of color, could learn advanced logic, coding, and problem-solving for free. The tagline read, "If the system won't teach us, we'll teach ourselves." It spread fast. Within 2 months, schools across the country were signing up. Teachers wrote thank you letters. Students sent messages, "You make me feel smart again." Tyrone became something new, not just a prodigy but a mentor. The boy who had once been isolated in the back row was now leading thousands of kids toward the front. Simone watched him work late into the night, face lit by his monitor's glow, fingers tapping in steady rhythm. The fear in her chest loosened slightly. For the first time in months, she saw her son living again. But the world wasn't done punishing them. When Jefferson Middle's name began trending again, this time because of the federal findings, the district board panicked. Emails leaked. Local papers demanded answers. Parents called for firing. In the chaos, Jefferson's superintendent held a private meeting with their legal counsel. Their solution wasn't reform. It was revenge. A week later, Simone opened her mailbox and found a thick manila envelope. Legal seal. Certified letter. The sender, Jefferson County Unified School District. Her breath caught as she unfolded the first page. Notice of civil action, defamation and damages. The district was suing her, claiming her blog, interviews and statements had caused irreparable harm to the school's reputation and staff morale. Her hands trembled as she scanned the pages. They were demanding damages. Money she didn't have. Silence she couldn't afford. When Tyrone came home, she was still at the table, eyes wet, papers scattered around her. "They're suing us," she said, barely a whisper. He stood frozen. What? For speaking the truth. For fighting back. Tyrone swallowed hard. "So that's it? They ruin everything and still get to be the victims?" Simone looked up, fire replacing her fear. "No, baby. This time, they picked the wrong family." The school files a defamation lawsuit against Simone. The courtroom wasn't built for revolution, but that's exactly what it felt like. There was a kind of tension in the air that didn't belong to legal proceedings alone. It was the weight of years, of overlooked complaints, buried brilliance, and weaponized policies, masquerading as structure. Now Jefferson Unified School District was on the offense, and Simone Ellis, who had once stood alone at PTA meetings, notebook in hand, rage quietly restrained, was now at the center of a case that had become a national litmus test. The district's official claim was clear. Simone Ellis had caused irreparable harm to the school's reputation through her viral blog, online posts, and repeated media appearances. They argued her words were reckless, her tone defamatory, and her actions malicious. They accused her of exploiting her son's success for public sympathy, and accused Tyrone of hiding behind digital manipulation. But when Simone entered the courtroom that day, flanked by a team of pro bono civil rights lawyers, each one chosen for their expertise in educational discrimination, it was clear this trial wasn't going the way Jefferson planned. In opening statements, the school's lawyer, a balding man in an expensive navy suit, spoke with the poise of someone used to winning. He cited district enrollment drops, community backlash, staff turnover, and media attacks on innocent educators. He used terms like unsubstantiated emotional narratives and targeted harassment fueled by online mob mentalities. He spoke of Mrs. Thornton as a long-standing decorated educator, subjected to unjust public shame.
Then it was Simone's lead attorney's turn.
He stood, adjusted his glasses, and simply said, "We intend to prove that what Simone Ellis did wasn't defamation, it was documentation, and that the harm she revealed already existed. She simply refused to keep it hidden."
One by one, the courtroom became a chessboard. And Simone, she was no longer a pawn.
They brought in former Jefferson students, teachers, and parents, many who had remained quiet for years, now emboldened by Simone and Tyrone's courage. Some recounted their own children's experiences with segregated gifted programs and selective testing. Others confirmed watching black students given harsher punishments, fewer recommendations, and more skepticism. But the twist came on day 3 of the trial. Simone's attorney submitted a thumb drive into evidence. "Your Honor, this is a recovered audio recording from a Jefferson staff meeting, post-viral escalation." Objection. The district's lawyer stood quickly. "It's inadmissible, likely obtained without consent," but the judge overruled. "We'll listen to it in chambers if necessary. For now, play the clip." The courtroom quieted. A projection screen flickered to life. Static, then muffled voices. "You see her on CNN again. She's got a whole campaign going, acting like we lynched the kid. Don't worry. Eventually this'll pass. They always burn out." Laughter. Then a voice identified later as a district administrator said something that cracked the case wide open. "We just need to contain the backlash until this thing dies down. Then we'll rebuild the narrative." Gasps. Murmurs. One woman in the press section dropped her pen. The judge paused. "Play that section again." They did. Louder. "Contain the backlash." Jefferson's lawyer stood again, flustered. "This doesn't represent policy, Your Honor." Simone's attorney responded calmly. "No, it represents truth. The exact truth my client tried to expose. That instead of protecting students, this district protected its public image. That instead of helping Tyrone Ellis, it tried to contain him. From that moment, the trial changed." Media outlets outside the courthouse updated headlines in real time. Leaked audio reveals Jefferson officials tried to contain racism fallout. Ellis family vindicated as audio exposes bias. The clip went viral before the judge's gavel even fell for recess. Simone watched it all unfold without blinking. But Tyrone, seated quietly in the gallery behind her, gripped the edge of the bench. His mind, always methodical, felt the shift. For once, the numbers were starting to align on their side. The following day, Mrs. Thornton was called to the stand. Her hair was neatly curled, her demeanor poised, but her words stumbled. "I never intentionally discriminated," she said. "You said in an internal email that Tyrone needed to be pushed until he cracked. What did you mean by that?" Simone's attorney asked. "I meant academically challenged. We often use strong language internally." "Did you say similar things about white students?" Mrs. Thornton hesitated. "No, but that's not." "Thank you. No further questions." The room tensed again. Then came testimony from Simone herself. She stood at the witness stand, voice steady, not rehearsed but lived. I started my blog not to hurt anyone, but because I refused to keep begging a system to see my son. I wasn't going to watch him shrink under the weight of other people's low expectations. I've been polite, I've been quiet, I've been patient, and it got my son nearly erased from his future. She held up a printout of the defamation suit. This isn't about damage. This is about revenge. The district couldn't stand being exposed, so they tried to silence the person who made it impossible to ignore. By the time she stepped down, many in the room were already certain where the verdict would land. But the school had one more surprise. Instead of resting their case, the district introduced a counterclaim. They requested an injunction against Open Mind Tyrone's educational platform, claiming it was created using intellectual property developed, while Tyrone was still a registered student. The room erupted. "You're now trying to own a platform created after you pushed him out?" The judge asked, incredulous. "Our position is that the learning materials used may have originated under Jefferson's instructional domain." The judge interrupted. "Your position is rejected. Sit down." Whispers turned into a buzz. Outside the courthouse, protesters had gathered. Signs read, "Education is not ownership. Protect Black genius." The trial continued for 2 more days, but Jefferson was already playing a losing game. Then, just before closing arguments, Tyrone received an email. He stared at his phone for a long moment, then turned to Simone and silently handed it over. She read it twice. Her lips parted. It was from MIT Admissions. "Dear Tyrone Ellis, we are extending an invitation for early admission into our pre-college AI Scholars program. Full scholarship, room, board, travel. We've been following your journey. You belong here." Tyrone said nothing. He didn't need to. His face said everything. In a courtroom built to define who had value, MIT had just rewritten the score. MIT wants to admit Tyrone early. Full scholarship. For many, the courtroom verdict felt like the final chapter. But for Simone and Tyrone Ellis, it was only the beginning of a new, uncharted era. One where vindication didn't erase the scars, but made them more visible, more undeniable, and more urgent. Tyrone's story was everywhere. National education forums named him Student of the Year. His testimony clips were taught in university education departments. His face appeared in classroom posters, with captions like "Believe in brilliance before it's proven." But Tyrone wasn't trying to be a symbol. He was trying to breathe. At home, he returned to his desk like he always had, back to algorithms, back to logic, back to the clean certainty of code. But the difference now was that the world had pulled up a chair beside him. His online platform Open Mind surged past 2 million users. Students from all 50 states and more than 20 countries joined to learn under his curriculum. He read messages like prayers. "I thought I was dumb. Then I solved your puzzle. I used to hide my answers. Now I raise my hand." Yet, even in the glow of progress, Tyrone couldn't shake the damage done. In public, he smiled. In private, he flinched. At his first live keynote at an education summit in Atlanta, the lights dimmed, and he stood at the podium, trying to remember his notes. But when a teacher in the crowd stood to ask a question, Tyrone froze, not because he didn't know the answer, but because for a flash of a second, he was 12 again, facing Mrs. Thornton, waiting to be accused. Simone noticed it from the front row. Her fingers tensed, but then Tyrone breathed through it. He answered, and the audience erupted. That summit changed everything. Tyrone became a recurring voice on education panels, STEM equity conferences, and think tank roundtables. But Simone, too, was evolving. She declined sponsorships, turned down book deals, and instead used her momentum to push for a national policy initiative, the Equitable Access for Gifted Students Act. Her goal was clear: dismantle the gatekeeping around gifted programs, require bias training for all educators, and implement nationwide metrics that focused on potential, not just test results. She met with lawmakers, delivered speeches in D.C. She wasn't just Tyrone's mother anymore, she was a movement's mother. A documentary team followed them for months. The working title, Not an Exception, The Tyrone Ellis Story. It was picked up by a major streaming platform before filming even wrapped. Still, Mrs. Thornton never publicly apologized. She quietly resigned from Jefferson Middle, citing media interference, and later relocated to another school district 2 states away. The damage remained unspoken, unowned. One day, while Tyrone reviewed new math modules, Simone walked in holding a folder. "Another request," she said. "Harvard wants you to do a fireside with their AI faculty." Tyrone looked up. Do they know I'm still only 13? Simone smirked. That's why they want you. But behind the jokes was fatigue. Tyrone still struggled to walk into a classroom without scanning for danger. Every compliment came with an invisible asterisk. Every teacher's nod carried the echo of suspicion. Simone noticed the night terrors, the moments he hesitated before clicking send, the way he never sat near windows anymore when coding. Trauma doesn't end with a court ruling. It just finds new places to live inside you. And yet, Tyrone refused to be a ghost of his past. He expanded Open Mind to include guest lectures, with instructors from HBCUs, immigrant scholars, and neurodivergent coders. The platform began adding language options, first Spanish, then Urdu, then Haitian Creole. It became more than an education tool. It became a classroom without ceilings. Then came the message that neither of them expected. One night, as Simone cleared the dinner table and Tyrone updated lesson modules, his inbox pinged with a private message from a student named Jordan M. Subject: You don't know me, but I'm at Jefferson. Tyrone opened it slowly. The words unspooled like a mirror. They make us feel stupid for asking too many questions. One teacher laughed when I said I liked math. I wanted you to know, they haven't changed. As his platform gains millions of users, Tyrone gets a message from a student at Jefferson Middle. The message came late, nearly midnight. Tyrone had been refining an AI-based problem generator for Open Mind's upcoming competition track. The glow from his screen was the only light in the room. He was deep in code, algorithms, logic loops, test functions, when his inbox pinged. Subject: I want to learn. He opened it, expecting the usual questions from curious students. But this message was different. Hi. My name is Aaliyah. I'm in 7th grade. They say I'm not smart enough to join the math team. They told my mom I should focus on more realistic goals. But I saw your video. I saw what you did. And I think maybe I could be smart too. I want to learn. Please. If you see this, write back. Tyrone read the message 3 times. Something about it hit too close. The precision of her hurt. The pleading beneath her politeness. It felt like a message he could have written a year ago. Before the hearings. Before the backlash. Before MIT. He didn't wait. Reply: Aaliyah, I see you. You are smart enough. Let's get to work. That was the moment it changed again. Not because of a lawsuit. Not because of an award. But because of one child who refused to shrink into the corner of a classroom and found courage in someone who had once been forced there too. The next day, Tyrone pitched an idea to Simone over breakfast. I want to add something new to Open Mind, he said. Not just lessons. I want students like Aaliyah to be able to talk to someone. Not teachers. Not adults. Other kids. Peer mentors. Simone raised an eyebrow. Moderated? With training, he said. Already sketching out the model. We'll set guidelines. Vet the volunteers. I'll write a matching algorithm. Aaliyah should never feel like she's alone in a room full of people who don't see her. Simone smiled quietly. I think it's brilliant. Within a month, the Peer Lift feature launched. Open Mind's home screen now read, Learn together, grow together. Students could sign up to mentor younger peers, or request one. Every mentor had to complete a training track and demonstrate both math proficiency and empathy. The response was explosive. By the end of the first week, 15,000 students had signed up. By the end of the first month, 50. But Tyrone wasn't done. He remembered how he'd been excluded from the district math competition, how gifted had been defined by skin tone, zip code, and teacher comfort. So he launched a new initiative, the National Underrepresented Math League, NUNEAG for short. No entrance tests, no school recommendations, no GPA minimums, just one entry rule. You must be a student who was told you weren't enough. NUM League held online qualifiers monthly. Then regional competitions. Then national finals. All virtual. Aaliyah entered her first regional meet, 2 months after her first email. She didn't win, but she placed in the top 20%. Tyrone sent her a virtual badge. The next genius doesn't need permission. She just needs a path. It became a slogan. Students across the country started tagging Open Mind on social media, posting their progress, handwritten notes, whiteboard scribbles, screenshots of completed modules. From invisible to invincible. They said I wouldn't get it. Now I'm tutoring my class. And then Washington called. The White House STEM Awards were an annual tradition, mostly attended by educators, policymakers, and a few celebrated prodigies from elite institutions. But this year they invited Tyrone Ellis, not just as an honoree, but as the closing keynote speaker. Simone sat in the front row of the East Room. She wore a deep blue blazer, the same one she'd worn at Tyrone's first federal testimony. Her hands gripped the program, knuckles pale with pride.
The lights dimmed.
Tyrone walked on stage, now 14, tall for his age, but carrying the gravity of someone who'd lived 3 lifetimes in the span of 2 years. He looked out at a room filled with the people who built the system that once tried to erase him. And he didn't blink. "My name is Tyrone Ellis," he said. "And I used to think the only way to prove I belonged was to solve problems faster than anyone else. But now I understand that the real problem was never the math. It was who was allowed to hold the pencil." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. "I built Open Mind not because I'm extraordinary, but because thousands of extraordinary kids like me never got the chance to be seen. We don't need more gifted programs. We need systems that stop guarding the gate and start opening the door." He paused. "I'd like to close today by asking every person in this room to remember a time when they were underestimated. Then I want you to imagine what would have happened if you believed them. And I want you to fight like hell to make sure no kid ever has to choose between their genius and their safety." Thunderous applause. Simone wiped a tear as flashbulbs lit the room. Afterward, as the room buzzed with congratulations and invitations, Tyrone walked off stage toward his mother. He leaned in, whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "Now it's her turn." Simone blinked. "Whose?" "Aaliyah's, and all of them." He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded printout. It was a scholarship proposal. He wanted to launch the Aaliyah Initiative, a full scholarship program for girls of color pursuing STEM, named not after himself, but after the first student who reminded him why the fight mattered. The proposal included mentorship, laptops, internet access, and transportation for in-person events. "She believed in me before I answered," Tyrone said. "Now it's my job to answer back." Simone held the paper, stunned by the scope, the thoughtfulness, the fire behind it. "You're building a new system," she whispered. Tyrone nodded. "No, we're replacing the old one." That night, as they returned to their hotel, Tyrone's phone buzzed again. Another message. Subject: "I'm scared to say I love math." He opened it. "They laugh at me when I finish early. They say I'm trying too hard. But I found your site. I think I can try again. Can you help me?" Tyrone looked at Simone. She smiled. "Looks like the revolution just got another recruit." As the credits rolled in the documentary, as news anchors debated how one boy changed everything, as school districts rewrote their equity plans, and parents attended trainings inspired by the Ellis case, Tyrone sat at his desk again, one hand on the keyboard, one eye on a mentor dashboard. No fanfare, no spotlight, just one boy answering one message at a time. Because genius doesn't belong to systems. It belongs to the kids who survive them. And now, thanks to Tyrone, they didn't have to survive alone. Tyrone walks off stage and whispers to Simone, "Now it's her turn." They tried to bury a child's brilliance behind silence, bias, and shame. But Tyrone didn't just survive. He changed the rules for everyone who comes after him. If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or told to sit in the back, this story was for you. Type yes if you believe.